is a difficult and often a taboo subject to be talked about, most especially within the black and ethnic minority group. My friend and colleague, Mr. Obi Francis Iroegu, developed renal failure 5 years ago. He had one of the fortunate ones and had 7 live transplants early this year. Seeing the effect the transplant had on him, his life and the life of his family actually was very amazing, and that actually led us to develop this project, to start to look at this organ donation among the black and ethnic minority. So once again, I welcome you all, and I welcome all the speakers who will be telling us, giving us facts about organ donation and transplant, and to inform us of the need for us, black and ethnic minority, to be involved, to be concerned, and to see what we can do after the workshop. I welcome you all once again.
He's from the Caribbean background. It was not just in the context of his illness that he was refusing monitoring by weekly blood tests, but he made a statement that really got me very interested, and I thought, this is quite important. It's such a big thing. He said, every time you take this blood sample from me, am I not losing my ancestral bloodline? I just couldn't figure out where he was coming from. I sat down with him and I talked a lot. He needed a lot of psychoeducation on the subject and so on. But I noticed that it wasn't just a matter of perhaps a couple of mils of blood sample going up. He had some understanding, deep-rooted beliefs or belief systems that date back to where he came from his grandfathers and so on. You may have heard about what their culture, how they will react to such thing as blood or a part of the body being given away to somebody else or for whatever purpose.
We do need to focus on prevention and management, because long term, if we continue the way we do in this country, we're always going to be trying to play catch up in terms of number of organ donors. So we do need to think about how we manage diabetes and how we manage high blood pressure. But in the short term, we do need to address this issue about how do we ensure that we only currently make up 1% of organ donors. How do we get those numbers up? How do we get the refusal rates to come down?
Rather than red cells for burnt tumours. And eventually I said, do I really need to, my blood isn't good enough, and so they're just, driving plasma out of it. And I stopped doing that, and now I realise that I shouldn't have done that. Of course it is required, and accidents do happen. And purely because I was born in Pakistan, so, typhoid or malaria or whatever, they have to be concerned about it. My second, it's not a question once again, it is when people need a kidney, they tend to go to poor countries and buy a kidney, which is really, really sad. Okay, sad in terms of those people who don't even have primary healthcare knowledge or education, and they are compelled to sell an organ in order to bring their family up. If we have enough organs available here, those people's lives will be still saved. So this moral issue as well as a health issue, plasma in relation to health, and buying an organ is a moral issue for me. Yeah. So that's where I think perhaps using celebrities, particularly footballers, they can come on the television. I know someone does come and say, donate blood, but it has to be highlighted enough so people often talk about it. Particularly you know, people from ethnic minorities, they tend to have satellites and all that.
Yeah.
So approaching those minority, what do they call them? Websites, TV channels.
Yeah.
I think that is vital and exceedingly, you know, required.
Okay. If they had communicated to you the importance of your contribution and reassured you about what part of your blood wasn't being used and why it wasn't, your experience and your actions would have been different. The problem is we're not very good sometimes as public services at communicating. So that's that one. The issue about buying and selling organs, I spend a lot of time travelling the world looking at the plight of both. So let me play this two ways. Let me play it the way first of a UK resident. If you're a UK resident and you're black or Asian, so I won't embarrass anybody in the audience, I'll stick to me. If it's me, and I've got two young children, 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, if one of their kidneys were to pack up, I say this because I sit on the task force, we had this debate, I'm not convinced that I can say 100% I wouldn't consider going abroad. And the reason being, I've just shown you the data, because that would mean my kids have got to wait probably at least 4 years, minimum, so I've got to watch them for 4 years, and the reality is they're probably not going to get a transplant. So, if I want them to live, talking about the person's need, I can see if someone can identify a way of their loved one living, I can see why they do it. Now thinking about the recipient, the donors, absolutely. I mean, I've seen people who've had absolutely appalling donor transplant operations where you know, the aftercare has been non-existent, and actually in some cases they haven't even known they've donated an organ. So we should stop this exploitation. But the only way we're going to stop this exploitation, goes back to this thing, is if we as a British society accept that we're going to contribute to the organ donor pot. Because if we don't, then we all know, I mean, that's one of the things about the internet. I could Google now on that computer at the back and find you umpteen places around the world who will happily offer you a transplant and probably a tour of that country while you're at it. It's called marketing.
I just wanted to comment on when you produced the data right at the beginning, that you had a large recipient column and a small donor column.
Yeah.
And this presumably is because the number of organs that you get from each donor allows that column of recipients to be much greater.
Yes.
And the only other comment I wanted to make, I was interested you put up a pancreas as being something. I'm the governor of Basildon Hospital and I got a background in nursing. I did ask the question of a consultant about transplanting pancreas, and he said it was not done very often because the pancreas starts to digest itself almost as soon as you try and, so you have to transplant extremely quickly, is that correct?
It is,
Yes.
yeah.
Is there anything in place or any program in place towards prevention and management, and what exactly do you mean by prevention and management?
Okay. I know this is about organ donation, but the reason I'm going to talk about prevention and management is obviously my day job. I'm a professor of public health, so I think prevention and management is the solution, really. There are lots of programs available by either primary care or GP surgeries, or I don't know if people have heard of something called Desmond programs, self-care programs, where essentially, as a country now, the healthcare system wants us as a public to take far more responsibility for our healthcare. Now, what I say to the healthcare system is there's a deal to be struck here, because if you want me to take more responsibility for my healthcare, you as a GP or a nurse or wherever it is, or hospital, then also need to do your bit to make sure you call me in routinely, you check me when I should be checked, and not only worry about me when I'm, if you like, costing you a lot of money. So I think where those programs I've seen are working well, you know, I've seen good programs in, I would say, Luton, Leicester, places in Birmingham, where I'm now seeing proper community engagement, using either peer educators, that use events like this, that use DVDs, all sorts of things about trying to engage the public better in terms of diabetes kidney disease, blood pressure. You're actually seeing things like Asian women's keep fit clinics or healthy cooking classes or whatever. So you're beginning to see these sort of events.
How are you feeling? You enjoying the program so far?
Yeah.
What do you make of it?
It's really interesting.
Interesting and educated?
Yeah.
Yes?
I think when I'm old, I want to give my organs away.
Oh, you've been touched by the program so far?
Yeah.
Wonderful. What's your name?
Shama.
Shama.
Nisinde.
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 Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
What's your name, sir?
Abi Mustafa.
Abi Mustafa. Okay, what do you make of the presentation so far on the program?
I think it's been very informative and educating.
Okay, prior to the program today and what you've heard, what's been your knowledge of organ donation? Is this something you heard of before?
I've heard of it before.
Okay. You considered it at some point?
No.
No? Okay, has this changed your mind in any way?
It would make me consider it.
Okay.
Maybe as a dead donor, not as a live one.
Okay. Alright, so thank you very much. Hello sir, how are you?
Okay, thank you.
What's your name?
My name is Thomas Halley.
Thomas Halley. Okay, the presentation made by the professor, how informative and how impressed are you about it?
I found it very helpful, a lot of information and very clearly communicated so that we were put at our ease and there was humour and we were explained that it is a serious problem and we need to consider it, whatever part of the community we're from, it's a problem that affects the whole of the UK.
Okay. Is this something that you gladly speak to other people about?
Yeah, definitely.
From what you gather here today?
And it's given me ideas about maybe being more proactive about getting the message out about the importance of organ donation.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
If you see me as I am now, I look perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with me. And nobody will know that I've actually got a kidney transplant. My story started some time ago. It was about 1995 when I wasn't very well at all. I was suffering various monthly period problems, headaches, sometimes I was extremely tired, so on. And I kept on going to doctors and all they told me was, you probably might be coming up to menopause, so you have to be prepared for that. But in actual fact, that was not the case. I was basically dying. And my husband, very shortly, was going to be without me, and he was going to have to manage everything himself. Royal London at Barts Hospital by 11 AM. You need to be packed ready because we're going to do a blood matching to make sure that this is compatible for you before we do the transplant. I had to get my husband to come out of work immediately, so I had to talk to his boss and ask for permission for him to leave. I started packing. On the other hand, I told my sons what was happening. I had to ring my school and tell my headmistress that I was going to be out of work for a number of weeks because I'm having a transplant. And all she told me was, Gala, don't worry about your job is perfectly safe, you go for it, and when you're well, you tell me and we will celebrate. I said, fair enough, okay, so I went. When I walked in to that hospital, the first thing they did was took my right arm. They took up so much blood, there was about 25 capsules of it. They went and analysed all of it. They asked my husband to give blood as well because they wanted to match the antibodies. He was wonderful. He gave the blood, whatever was needed. After that, we had to wait. We had to wait a number of hours. Then the consultant came in and he said to me, Mrs. Mystery, we are not going to ask any other donors to come in and have a blood test because yours is 99% match. And after that, everything just moved very, very fast, because I was put on bed, I was told to rest, I couldn't eat or drink, operation was scheduled, they were doing all the other tests and so on. And overnight, I had a kidney transplant. When I woke up, the consultant came up and he said to me, Mrs. Mystery, everything went wonderful, you are great, there's no problems whatsoever, and now there's no need for you to worry.
And I must congratulate Dr. Ibrisi and his team for putting this wonderful occasion together. This is a very important aspect of management. I know my day's job is not to do with any public health, but as a physician, our duty is to ensure good health and prolongation of life. Like the statistics shows, Africans tend to have the worst outcome in any medical management. So today, I'm going to go through what is organ donation, the scale of the problem, the religious, ethical aspects, then the newspaper that more than 10,000 people in the United Kingdom are in need of organ donation. But only 3% of organ donors come from the African and ethnic minority background. Transplanted an organ from one identical to the other. That was possible because they had the same genetic material. But look at all of us here. How many of us are twins? And how many of us are identical twins when we can have a transplant without any rejection? But science is a match that will continue as long as man continues to increase his desire for knowledge. So with more experimentation, they were able to find out that the army that destroys transplanted organs is the immune system of the recipient. And to make organ transplantation possible, they had to suppress this army, which we call the immune system. So that led to the discovery of anti-rejection drugs. And the commonest one, like the lady told you, is cyclosporine. And with this, organ transplantation is now an everyday thing, although the organs to transplant are in short supply. And the demand for organs quite outstrips the resources that are available. Now, to the religious aspect of organ donation, all religions believe that there is a place to sustain life. All religions preach love. And when we have love for each other, we give to each other. So the Buddhists believe that there are no injunctions in Buddhism for or against organ donation. The Christian faith is based on love, like I said. And emphasis is on giving. And you can sum it up by freely giving so that you will freely receive. That's what the Bible teaches us. So, as we go along in this discussion, you will observe that the teaching of Christ can be summarized in one short statement, that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. Religion, they also believe that the body should not be dismembered for any reason. But there was a fatwa in this country a few years ago by the council, the spiritual council of Islam, United Kingdom, that the desire to reduce pain and prolong the life of a fellow human being supersedes that reason for not dismembering the body. Based on the result that they support organ transplantation as a means of alleviating pain and saving life. Scientifically, the Benin or the Edo-speaking people that's based from southern Nigeria, They see the body as sacred and that it should not be dismembered for whatever reason. They believe that there is reincarnation, that when you leave this phase of existence, you move into another phase of existence, and you need your total body parts. That is their belief. But now, with education, there are cultural changes that as much as possible, when there is health needs, that we should be able to give, so that in our own turn, if we do need, we can also receive as well. So the summary is that the ancient and traditional beliefs are gradually giving way to modern thinking. So the ethics of organ donation and transplantation. The Catholic Church, the Buddhists, Judaism, they all believe that this body is the temple of the Lord, that giving is based on law and no other reason. In the Pope's speech to doctors in Italy in 1996, he said, giving of blood or other body tissues should be love-based. And for no other reason should we put pressure on any individual to part with any part of his body. So it is not appropriate to travel to India, for example, or Pakistan to purchase a human part. Thank you very much.
Is to listen to Sharon Platt MacDonald. Miss MacDonald, Platt MacDonald, is a director of the Health Ministries Disability Awareness, which is a part of the British Union Conference of 7 Days Adventists.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. If we can have these slides from the beginning, thank you. This afternoon I've been asked to look at organ donation and its impact in the African, Asian, West Indian group. And I'm going to be looking at faith and fact. What are the faith aspects that impact organ donation, and what are the facts, and how do we combine these? How do we balance the varying faith perspectives, the varying medical perspectives, and how do we achieve engagement? Because that's what we want, don't we? Next slide, please. And so faith, when you think of faith, various denominations will have their meaning. But if you look at faith as the confident belief or trust in the truth or trustworthiness of a person, idea or thing, you realise that it's very broad in its analysis. And in fact, if somebody's going to have trust and faith in something, that becomes very important to them. So even when life circumstances like trauma or physical disability hits, their response to that is going to be framed by the belief and the faith that they have in their deity or their religion. So in my third year of nursing, I was allocated to a renal ward, and we had a minister from our church, one of our church, who came in renal failure. He had been working in the West Indies, and he came across to the UK. There was a lot of pressures, and his diet wasn't as it used to be in his home country. Subsequently, he became hypertensive and diabetic and had renal failure and had to have a transplant. Now, his first transplant lasted, I believe, it was about 2 years. And with all the hype and all the preparation for that, he was very disappointed that he only got 2 years out of it. And I nursed him at a time when he was very depressed, and he was on drugs because the kidney was rejecting. I then met him again several years later, and he had a second transplant, which at the time when I met him, I think he was now in his 10th year with that second transplant. What was the difference? The first transplant was from what they call cadaver donor, was from a white donor, but the second transplant was from someone of his own ethnic background. And we do know that when you have transplant from your one's own ethnic background, there's a much better chance of survival. So you haven't even had the grater cake and the sweet potato pudding yet for dessert. You've already got a high sugar rate. But when we had the leaflets that had their foods on it, that helped them to feel, well, she knows what we're talking about, she's aware of us. When we went into the Asian community, we cooked with other fats, that, like olive oil and other less complex fats, so that if they were used to using ghee, or ghee, however you pronounce it, ghee, we showed them how to use and how to cook the foods using different oils, which made it taste still nice. So you need to relate to things that they relate to so that they can understand and look at other options.
So there are traditions from the Roma people who would object to having organ donation. Okay, so you may in your professional capacity meet Roma people coming into hospital with health complications. And African Americans have had some objections to organ donation. So a very brief list, and as I said, any questions you can ask later. We're going to move on now. Now here's a quote from the previous Pope, not the Pope that visited last week. This is the previous Pope, Pope John Paul II, who died about 5 years ago. He said, "Forcing someone to violate his conscience is the most painful blow inflicted to human dignity. In a certain sense, it is worse than inflicting physical death or killing." So how is that relevant to us? If we're wanting to promote organ donation, if we believe that it is a good thing, it is going to save lives, what do we do when people say, no, I don't want that? Whether they are somebody who's ill, who says, no, don't save my life, but I think it's wrong, or whether it's somebody who could potentially donate an organ, but they say, no, my conscience won't allow me. What can we do with people in that situation? Now, whether or not you agree with everything Pope John Paul II said, I think he's got a point here, because nobody likes being told to do something that you don't want to. However, people can change. Religious people can change. Here's some examples. That is a cover from the Watchtower magazine. Many of you may have had that put through your door, or met Jehovah's Witnesses at the doorstep who might have tried to give you one of those magazines. It contains official teachings from the Jehovah's Witness religion. Now, somebody actually went to the trouble of looking at what Jehovah's Witnesses have said in their magazine about organ donation and blood donation. And over the years, it has changed. Officially, as we've seen, according to the main world religions, there is no objection to organ donation.
I have an Asian daughter-in-law, so her children are what you call mixed blood. Would this cause any issue if they ever needed organ donation when they get older?
Yeah, all organs are matched on tissue type and blood group, so depending on their tissue type and blood group, it would be an issue. But I suppose what I'd go back to is that it doesn't really matter if they're Asian. I think as a UK public, everybody needs to think about organ donation.
I'm speaking from I'm an ignorant person in this situation, and maybe my question is laughable, I don't know. But I find it very difficult to understand if when a human being is dead, you're still using the organ. The way I look at it, if somebody is dead, I'm pretty sure his body metabolism doesn't function anymore. So why would that organ be transferred to a living human being and at the same time functioning under that human being? That's what I don't understand.
Simple as that, in terms of the dying. There is the brain death, there is the heart stopping. If you look at some patients in the hospital, they are no longer able to breathe on their own. So the machine takes over the function of the lungs and the heart, and it can be kept alive for a very long time. At that time, it's been shown that when you speak or you sing or play music to them, they can still hear you in situations where people recover after a very long time. So the heart may stop, the individual may still be alive. That is the gray area when people talk about the death of the physical body, when the brain is still functioning. Hence, some people are reluctant and say, oh, this individual, the brain might still be alive. On that premise, they may not give permission for organ donation. Because even if you're a organ card carrier, organ donation card carrier, the hospital or the organ transplantation team cannot just take over the body and remove the organ willy-nilly as such. They will still have to seek permission from the closest relative to give that very important permission so that they can obtain the organ. What you have said is some problems. It's difficult to say that when the body dies, the brain may still be living. That's the concept. But when the brain dies, it is almost always certain that all of the body dies. So the heart stopping is not synonymous with death because the brain may still be functioning. So you have not asked a stupid question. You asked a very scientific question.
Sorry, can I just add to that? There were some discussions about being a recipient from a donor or someone who had died. Now, a pastor in our church, he had renal failure, and he categorically announced that he didn't want any organ from a dead person. And some people feel that way. Luckily, his daughter was of the same tissue type, and he was able to get a kidney from her, because there are living donors.
There is a time interval where the processes of what we call rigor mortis sets in. So everything about organ donation is done quickly. So if somebody died, for example, as a result of an accident, that individual needs to be taken to the hospital and tissue typing done quickly. All right. I told you about the difference between brain death and stopping the heart. I also told you that sometimes, the doctors have the facility to keep the body going even when there is brain death with oxygen and, feeding the individual intravenously so that the tissue is kept alive. So, for example, you can transplant the cornea of an individual. People that do facial transplant, finger, all the other vital organs.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's clear now. Right, thank you very much. We don't need to come to support, but to come and be a part of a campaign group of blood and tissue donations. I'm a civil servant, and I'm a member of the Proud. I'm a regional representative of Proud organizations in the Ministry of Justice, and at the same time, I'm a regional representative in the faith forum, multi-faith forums. So I go everywhere within the countries, talking about various things affecting black and ethnic minorities. As I'll be speaking here today, I'm already putting a note here that by March next year, I'm going to have an event, and please, I'm going to get your details within the Ministry of Justice and the Civil Service. I'm going to organize a seminar and a workshop on organ donations, and I'll be very grateful if you can attend that place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is, having taken a look at all the information shown on the screen and heard a lot, there was one point that 90% of the people agree that organs should be donated. It's just that people are scared, or because of religious belief or one thing or the other, they are not able to, do what they think is right. Now, my question would be to the Prof. Do you think it might be unethical, either now or probably in the future to come? It may be now, maybe in 20 years' time, or maybe 50 or 100 years to come, that there might be a law that will say that, look, we all owe each other some form of love. We are all human beings. Now, make it that it should be compulsory that everyone who's passing away would consent to this, you know, and that, I mean, if one is dead, and, you know, nothing is going to prevent that. And so if it's going to save someone else, then let it just be. Would there be some, do you foresee such a thing in the nearest future? I would just like the Prof to just say a word on it. Thank you.
You probably won't have to wait. You probably won't have to wait 100 years for that. That's what you describe is something called the opting out law. It exists in many countries, and they have a law whereby everybody is assumed to be an organ donor unless they opt out. Now, we considered this in this country 2 years ago, and we decided the evidence does not support that. However, Gordon Brown, who was Prime Minister at the time, did say that if we didn't achieve a 50% increase in organ donors in 5 years, he would want whichever government was in power to review that decision. So we might move to opting out sooner than you think.
Yes. So I want to talk about hope in this area, in difficult area. And I want to talk about some new developments in the last few years, which are fact now. The first one is the organ donation task force, which has been mentioned a number of times by people here, that it's a 5-year challenge which we have set ourselves to say that we increase donations by 50%. We're in the 3rd year of that task force work, and in the first 2 years we increased donations by 19%. So that's excellent news, but my concern is that as we get into difficult financial situations and so on, whether that trend will continue and whether we'll hit that 50% target. That's the first thing. The second thing is about the number of donors. So we've all talked about, and Coach has been talking extensively and doing excellent work in getting more donors. We made some success on that. I think in the last 2 years, the number of donors, people who have those cards, has gone up by 1 million people, from 16 million to 17 million people. So it's not a small number, it's a huge number. So despite concerns about faith and all those sorts of things, the number of people who are actually now saying, yes, I do want to be on that register, is increasing, and we need to do more to get people from black and minority ethnic communities to be donors, as we've heard. Third thing I want to say is a practical one. If somebody is being a donor, when my wife had the operation, it is quite a major operation. But nowadays, you can have operations using what's called keyhole surgery. You can take a kidney out by keyhole surgery. So the operation is much smaller.
As a community leader, and I am here today, and I have heard, and I am going to discuss at a later date with the organizers of this event to have another event coming up in March 2011, so that we can start to preach the gospel to our communities.
Sure, my name is Gert Trandauer. I'm Professor of Diversity and Public Health and Director of the Institute for Health Research at the University of Bedfordshire.
How much research would you say has been put into this idea of organ donation?
Well, I think the whole issue about organ donation and the need for organs amongst the British population has been researched extensively for the last 20-25 years. The key issue is that over 10,000 people are waiting for a transplant in this country. Nearly 1,000 people a year die waiting for a transplant. And one of the things about today is that 1 in 4 people waiting for a transplant are from the Asian or African Caribbean background. We only make up 1 in 12 of the population. And one of the key reasons we require transplants more than most people is that Asians and African Caribbeans have higher rates of diabetes, higher rates of blood pressure, which lead to kidney disease. So an Asian or an African Caribbean is 6 times more likely to be diabetic than a white person. And once you're diabetic, an Asian or African Caribbean diabetic patient is nearly 10 times more likely than a white diabetic to then get kidney disease. And then people who have kidney failure only then have 2 choices, either dialysis or transplantation. And the research shows that white patients on average wait about 2 years for a transplant,
whereas an Asian or African Caribbean, if they receive a kidney transplant, wait at least 4 years. So that's twice as long. But the key issue is they are waiting longer because only 3% of the donor pool in this country is made up of non-whites. That means 97%, the majority of donors are white people, and because of tissue type and blood group matching being so important for a successful transplant, it's really, really important that people from every ethnic group contribute to the donor pool. So we need events like today to make sure that people from every community are aware about the need for organ donation. So we all access information in different ways. For example, some people might look at the media, some people might go to community events, other people might go to religious events, other people might use, I don't know, the website, Facebook, Twitter, other people might be more used to following role models, celebrities, sports stars. Whatever avenue there is of engaging with the public, we must do it so that everybody knows why there is such a shortage of organ donors in this country, and most importantly, everybody has an opportunity to become an organ donor.
There's been a brain behind the event that we've all witnessed here today. I'm talking about no other but Dr. Igwisi Osaru, who is the director, Essex Black and Ethnic Minority Research Center here in the United Kingdom. He's right in front of the camera now to quickly give an overview of the entire event. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for what you've been up to since.
Thank you very much for this moment. Now, the organization of which you are the director, tell us, what's been the reason for organizing events such as this today?
Well, Essex Black and Ethnic Minority Research Center was set up to research into problems and problems which the ethnic people face in Essex County. We have been looking at research work from different perspectives, researching into BME employment possibilities, training, development, and this event of organ donation awareness came about because of one of our colleagues who had renal failure 5 years ago, suffered a lot and eventually got a transplant in April. And so that was the beginning of our looking at the organ donation and transplant issue. And we decided to organize this workshop in order to create awareness among the Black and ethnic minority of the seriousness of the problem and why we should be educated towards knowing the problems and finding solutions in order to save life, because the Black and ethnic minority people tend to suffer more than the mainstream people.